In 1969, as we watched Neil Armstrong step onto the moon, a different, highly ambitious drama was unfolding in the industrial hub of Turin. Gianni Agnelli, the master strategist, controlling a quarter of the Milan Stock Exchange, was about to launch a high-stakes gamble of his own. Dubbed Italy's uncrowned king, Agnelli made a historic executive decision designed to permanently rewrite the strategic trajectory of his industrial empire, Fiat. In retrospect, our analysis reveals a move that was brilliantly conceived, yet systematically doomed to a tragic commercial failure. The underlying strategic challenge was simple to diagnose, yet nearly impossible to solve. For decades, Fiat dominated by selling cheap, compact cars. These utility vehicles, the 500, 600, and 1300, perfectly served a rebuilding post-war nation, effectively putting all of Italy on wheels. They democratized mobility, offering families the freedom to commute to work and escape to the coast without relying on public transit. However, macroeconomic forces were shifting rapidly. The economic miracle quickly transformed Italy from agrarian to industrial. Wages climbed, expanding the middle class and inflating consumer expectations. The Italian buyer, thrilled by a basic 500 in 1958, demanded far more by 1968. They wanted prestige, luxury power. Where did they look? Germany. Brands like Mercedes and BMW captured the premium Italian market with effortless ease. Elite professionals and lawyers, who once fiercely supported Fiat, were now parking prestigious German imports featuring that iconic three-pointed star directly outside their offices. For Agnelli, this market loss was a profound strategic defeat and a personal insult. The notion of wealthy domestic buyers purchasing foreign vehicles because domestic alternatives fell drastically short was a strategic failure that the Fiat chairman simply could not tolerate. His counterstrike arrived in March 1969 at Geneva with the unveiling of the ambitious Fiat 130. This was a direct declaration of war against Germany, boasting fully independent suspension on all four corners, standard power steering, four-wheel disc brakes, and under the hood, a high-performance engine bearing a legendary name, Aurelio Lampredi. To understand his pedigree, you and I must look back 20 years. Lampredi was the mastermind who, in the late 40s, designed the legendary 12-cylinder Ferrari engines that utterly shattered Alfa Romeo's supercharged dominance in Formula One racing. His 4.5-liter naturally aspirated engine won the 1951 championship, fundamentally altering race car design philosophy forever. By 1955, following intense friction with Enzo Ferrari, Lampredi departed Maranello to join Fiat in Turin, bringing unrivaled technical expertise that no other Italian engineer possessed. For the 130, he developed an advanced 60-degree V6 engine utilizing dual overhead camshafts, a cutting-edge configuration then. The initial V6 had a displacement of 2866 cubic centimeters, outputting 140 horsepower. It was a modern, highly refined power plant, featuring lightweight aluminum heads mated to a durable cast iron block, engineered to deliver the smooth torque and silky refinement that luxury buyers demanded. However, the strategic execution immediately faltered. The automotive press was polite but unenthusiastic. 140 horsepower was simply insufficient for a 1,600-kilogram chassis, especially compared to more powerful Mercedes rivals. And BMW outpaced Fiat with a dynamic performance they could not match. The market's response was brutally clear. While Mercedes sold nearly 2 million W114 models, Fiat managed a meager 15,093 sedans over 7 long years. A devastatingly asymmetric ratio, and an embarrassing setback for an industrial giant like Fiat. The climb upmarket was steeper than Agnelli anticipated. As analysts, we must ask, how do you pivot when your premium flagship fails to win over a single buyer? How do you respond after pouring billions of lira into an ambitious gamble that the market politely rejects? Fiat's countermove was audaciously desperate. If the initial sedan could not capture affluent buyers, they had to design something so breathtakingly elegant it would disrupt preconceptions and force the market to reevaluate the entire brand. To execute this artistic shift, Turin leveraged Pininfarina, the legendary design house where automotive form was elevated to high art. This monumental design task fell to a young master under 27 years old, who was then entering the most prolific and creative phase of his career. Paolo Martin, born in Turin, had launched his career at Michelotti in 1960, transitioned to Bertoni in 1968, before joining Pininfarina as chief of styling. It was a meteoric ascent for a designer with an uncompromising vision for modern luxury. His aesthetic blueprint was clear, sharp, precise lines, clean planes, aggressive angles, and an architectural severity balanced by impeccable proportions. He sought more than mere surface-level beauty. He wanted to craft an inevitable object so perfectly resolved it seemed like the only logical form. Then, a remarkable historical coincidence occurred. In 1969, while Martin designed the Italian coupe Rolls-Royce, simultaneously commissioned Pininfarina to develop an ultra-luxury British Grand Tourer, the Camargue. Martin found himself managing both high-profile contracts at once. Historical records suggest he drafted both flagship cars together, layered directly on his drafting board. Standing, he sketched the Italian lines on the top half. Sitting, he penned the British masterpiece on the bottom. Two icons born of a singular creative spark. Yet it was Fiat that hit showroom floors first in 1971. Even though the Rolls-Royce Camargue would not debut until 1975, when British executives spotted the 130 Coupe, they were furious. Let us look closer. The shocking similarity was obvious to anyone with eyes. The rear pillar, the back window, the waistline, sloping gently toward the trunk. They were twins, separated at birth, except one cost like a London flat, while the other wore a badge the British associated with cheap economy cars. At the 1971 Geneva Motor Show, the 130 Coupe was a revelation, earning press praise the sedan never achieved. It won Pininfarina a major design award, but the real genius lay not in the striking exterior, but in what was hidden inside. Martin completely reimagined the cabin, crafting a luxury space unlike any other Fiat built before or since. The dashboard featured circular dials with white needles on black, framed by premium wood trim stretching across the entire fascia. The center console, another Martin design, utilized a fiber optic lighting system that back then felt like pure science fiction for a production car. Yet the details truly exposed Fiat's massive strategic investment here. The glove compartment was integrated so seamlessly that an unsuspecting passenger would never notice it blending directly into the dashboard as if carved from a single block. Above it sat a second, equally stealthy compartment. A clever lever on the center tunnel let the driver unlock the passenger door without stretching an elite touch of class that even contemporary Mercedes models lacked. Better yet, the steering wheel adjusted for both rake and reach. Height-adjustable front seats were standard, and the rear windows could vent slightly, thanks to a lever with a mechanism designed so beautifully that it felt like fine jewelry. Down below the lower door sills were crafted in stainless steel with an embossed pattern, while accessing the trunk required flipping down the license plate, hiding the lock like a whispered secret. Every single body was hand-assembled at the Pininfarina plant in Cambiano, just outside of Turin, before being shipped to Fiat's Rivalta factory for final assembly. This was no ordinary assembly line. It was an artisan workshop. The results showed in the tight panel gaps, exquisite finishes, and an indefinable yet unmistakable luxury that only hand-built cars deliver. Anyone sitting inside for the first time felt pure, unadulterated awe. How could this masterclass wear a humble Fiat badge? Yet lurking beneath that gorgeous bodywork, beneath those first-class materials lay a dark secret that doomed the 130 Coupe to absolute failure. As investigators, we trace this back to internal corporate politics, a certain manufacturer in Maranello, and a deliberate decision to sabotage an engine built for greatness. The V6 engine, designed by Lampredi for the coupe, had been enlarged to 3,200 cubic centimeters, yet the spec sheet revealed a figure that baffled anyone with basic mechanical knowledge: a measly 165 horsepower. That was a weak output from a 3.2-liter engine, while competitors easily extracted over 200 horsepower. How could an engineering genius like Lampredi, the man who designed championship-winning Ferrari engines, produce something so painfully sluggish? For us historians, the answer is not incompetence, but rather a calculated political decision that remains highly controversial today. Anyone analyzing the engine bay of the 130 Coupe quickly uncovers a damning detail: the air intake. Feeding the carburetor was incredibly small. It was almost deliberately restrictive, as if choking a pipe capable of delivering far more volume. Specialist tuners who restored these vehicles over the years have since confirmed it. Simply replacing that airbox and swapping the single carburetor for a multi-carb setup unlocked massive hidden horsepower gains. This engine was built for high performance, but elite decision-makers in Turin deliberately choked it. Why? The most plausible explanation leads us straight to Maranello. In 1969, the same year the sedan debuted in Geneva, Fiat acquired a 50% stake in Ferrari. Gianni Agnelli realized the ultimate Italian corporate dream by acquiring the prancing horse. Yet that deal carried a silent, unwritten obligation, a gentleman's agreement never recorded in official archives. Fiat was forbidden from stepping on Ferrari's toes. A comfortable luxury cruiser was acceptable, and a stylish grand tourer could pass, but a mainstream Fiat, that challenged the performance of a purebred Ferrari, was corporate heresy. Thus, Lampredi's masterwork was strategically crippled, choked by a tiny intake, like forcing an Olympic sprinter to compete in shoes that are 2 sizes too small. The resulting performance was strategically dismal. The Coupe topped out at only 190 kilometers per hour, while its direct rivals easily cleared 210. 0 to 100 took a sluggish 10 seconds. Fine for a family car, but humiliating for a premium grand tourer. Here you and I uncover the fatal commercial blunder. By 1971, the British market priced this Fiat at £5,300. For that exact price, buyers could walk into a BMW dealership and leave with an E9. It too was gorgeous, sporting a straight 6 pushing 180 horsepower that left the Fiat in its dust. Yet the most brutal strategic comparison was with Jaguar. For just £3,200 over £2,000 less than the Fiat buyers could get a 12-cylinder, 260 horsepower XJ12, one of the finest sedans British automaking ever produced. Who would choose a 165 horsepower Fiat when they could spend less and get a Jaguar with nearly 100 more horsepower and 4 extra cylinders? Yet historically, the 130 Coupe offered things neither BMW nor Jaguar could match. Paolo Martin's design was cleaner and more modern than any rival. Inside, the cabin boasted superior attention to detail and a far more luxurious atmosphere. Pininfarina's handcrafted build quality had absolutely no equivalent in mass-produced German or British rivals of that era. On the road, its behavior was superb. Independent suspension guaranteed remarkable comfort, while the power steering remained precise and effortless. 4-wheel disc brakes performed with ease. Those who drove it described the sensation as steering a scaled-down Italian Rolls-Royce, or perhaps a Jaguar, with a touch of Mediterranean sportiness. Crucially, it was a vehicle that resisted excessive body roll in corners, maintaining reassuring stability, even through high-speed bends, offering a refined ride that justified every single lira of its hefty price tag. But here is the strategic blind spot you and I must analyze. The car's fatal flaw wasn't technical. It was existential. In the minds of 1970s European buyers, the Fiat brand meant one thing: people's cars, reliable and entirely unpretentious runabouts. The grandfather's 500, a colleague's 124. Asking a wealthy Milanese professional to park a Fiat outside his office, even if that Fiat was designed by Pininfarina and powered by a former Ferrari engineer's mechanical masterpiece, was like asking him to attend a gala dinner in an exquisite suit, but tailored with the wrong label. The garment itself was exceptional, but that badge would always betray him. In a market where brand prestige mattered as much as product quality, the 130 Coupe faced a strategic handicap no design award or velvet and wood interior could ever overcome. Then the perfect storm gathered over this misunderstood masterpiece, bringing with it a crisis no Italian would ever forget: the oil crisis. In October 1973, Arab nations belonging to the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries imposed an embargo on crude exports to Western nations that supported Israel during the Yom Kippur War. Within weeks, the price of a barrel of crude quadrupled, shifting the global economy in ways no analyst had foreseen. For Italy, the fallout was catastrophic. The government banned private driving on Sundays and holidays, forcing motorists onto foot. Italian roads, which, until that point, had been the vibrant symbols of a nation obsessed with speed and personal freedom, suddenly emptied out entirely. Families rediscovered bicycles, trains, and Sunday walks. Meanwhile, anyone contemplating a luxury car with a thirsty 3-liter engine that drank fuel like a traveler stranded in the desert instantly closed their wallets. For the 130 Coupe, this was the death blow. A vehicle struggling to find buyers during the boom years became utterly unsellable in an era of austerity. Its heavy fuel consumption was a notorious liability. Despite modest power output, Lampredi's 6-cylinder engine was incredibly thirsty. This strategic paradox left the 130 stranded in the worst of both worlds. Lacking true high-performance speed, yet drinking fuel as though it possessed it, these coupes sat abandoned on dealership lots. Beautiful, but gathering dust, while buyers crowded around the 127 and 128, the actual breadwinners keeping the Turin giant afloat. This crisis did not just kill the 130. It struck all of Fiat, bringing the industrial colossus of Turin to its knees. Balance sheets collapsed, deficits mounted, and Gianni Agnelli was forced into a compromise that still seems unfathomable today. In 1976, Italy's most powerful industrialist accepted $450 million from Colonel Gaddafi's Libyan regime, surrendering 15% of Fiat to a North African dictator, the ultra-elegant Agnelli, who dined with presidents and charmed global high society, now had to shake hands with Gaddafi simply to keep his enterprise alive. If you and I need definitive proof of how desperate those years were, this is it. Yet even as the 130 languished, inside Pininfarina and Fiat's own styling departments, designers kept drafting visionary concepts of what this platform could have achieved. First was the Maremma, an elegant 3-door shooting brake sporting vast glass surfaces aft of the B-pillars. Essentially a high-end family grand tourer that anticipated modern crossover design trends by decades. The second was the Opera, a sleek 4-door sedan that inherited the coupe's sharp styling language, translating it into an elegant executive limousine capable of rivaling any premium German flagship. Managers rejected both concept cars outright. Turin's top brass wanted absolutely nothing more to do with the 130. The project became a taboo topic within the corridors of Mirafiori, yet one man harbored no shame about the vehicle, viewing it as ideal for his personal use. Gianni Agnelli himself ordered a custom one-off station wagon from Fiat's design team, built by Carrozzeria Introzzi, a small specialist coach builder near Lake Como. Only 3 or 4 of these exclusive wagons were ever constructed. One for Gianni, one for his brother Umberto, and another for family friend Guido Nicola. Gianni's personal car was by far the most recognizable, finished in silver paint with faux wood side panels featuring a custom roof rack fitted with a classic wicker basket for his skis. The industrialist drove it for 11 years to Swiss ski resorts. Looking back today, you and I can see this car was a magnificent, tragic anomaly. It was the quintessence of the Agnelli style, an effortless elegance, blending extreme luxury with an almost provocative nonchalance. Picture a wicker basket on a luxury car, one of only 3 built, driven by Italy's richest man to ski in San Moritz. Who else could afford such a whim? Yet the 130 was about to enter Italian history in a way no one in Turin ever wanted. On the morning of March 16, 1978, just before 9, a blue Fiat 130 carrying Aldo Moro, president of the Christian Democrats and five-time prime minister, was driving down Via Mario Fani in Rome, escorted by an Alfa Romeo Alfetta with 3 police officers. Moro was heading to the Chamber of Deputies, where Parliament would vote on a confidence motion for the new Andreotti government, the first in the Republic's history to be backed by the Communist Party. A historic compromise that Moro had spent years patiently negotiating. Suddenly, 4 Fiats driven by Red Brigade's members blocked the convoy. 4 men armed with submachine guns, dressed in Alitalia crew uniforms to avoid friendly fire among terrorists who did not all know each other, jumped out and opened fire. In less than a minute, the 5 security guards were massacred. Only one of them, police officer Rafael Iozino, riding in the escort, Alfetta managed to draw his gun and fire 2 shots before being killed. Moro was dragged out and bundled into a nearby Fiat 132. 55 days later, on May 9th, his body was found in the trunk of a Renault 4 on Via Catani, halfway between the headquarters of the Christian Democrats and the Communist Party, a symbolic message of chilling brutality. The bullet-riddled blue 130 on Via Fani, with shattered glass and blood on the seats, became the most potent, painful image of Italy's years of lead. A car built to showcase the pinnacle of Italian engineering ended up symbolizing the darkest hour of the Republic's history. After that day, for many Italians, the name 130 no longer evoked luxury or Pininfarina, but only terror, political violence, and the death of a statesman who had dedicated his life to bridging opposing political forces. In 1976, the 130 sedan production lines halted forever at the Mirafiori plant. The following year, in 1977, the final coupe left the Pininfarina factory in Cambiano. No ceremony, no triumphant press releases, no proper farewell for a vehicle that had represented Fiat's highest ever ambition. The doors closed in silence, and with them, a chapter ended that Turin would never dare to reopen. Fiat engineered no successor for the 130, designed no new flagship, and abandoned the high-end luxury sedan and coupe market entirely. It was a total, unconditional surrender. Agnelli's dream of challenging Mercedes and BMW on their own turf had dissolved in under a decade, leaving behind a mere 4,294 coupes and just over 15,000 sedans. These figures, dwarfed by the hundreds of thousands of cars built annually by German rivals, reveal a commercial defeat with no room for appeal. Yet market failures and masterpieces are not mutually exclusive. The story of the 130 proves this almost poetically, because as the car languished in dealerships, its design DNA silently conquered the world through the very man who created it. After leaving Pininfarina almost immediately following the coupe's debut, designer Paolo Martin triggered a quiet chain reaction that Turin's executives could never have anticipated. The design language of the 130 coupe, those taut surfaces, those sharp edges, that belt line sweeping toward the tail with musical grace, became the blueprint for an entire generation of cars emerging from the Cambiano studio. First came the 1972 Ferrari 365 GT 42+2. Compare them side by side, the family resemblance is undeniable. It featured the same rigor and proportion, clean surfaces, and geometric elegance that rejected all useless ornamentation. Only this time it wore the prancing horse on the hood with a 12-cylinder engine underneath, and no one would ever dismiss it as ordinary. Then came the Lancia Gamma Coupe, echoing the 130's tail design and C-pillar treatment, and of course, the Peugeot 604, the French sedan that mirrored Martin's design with such fidelity, it felt more like an explicit homage than mere inspiration. Yet the most astounding case remains the Rolls-Royce Camargue, the world's most expensive car at its 1975 launch. A massive 2.5-ton British colossus, powered by a 6.75-liter V8, hand-finished by the elite Mulliner division in London. Sold at a price that could buy you 5 Jaguar XJ12s. Yet beneath that imperial exclusivity beat the design DNA of a Fiat that nobody wanted to buy. Let's look closer. The Camargue was the first metric-designed Rolls-Royce in history, the first with curved side glass, and the first to tilt its legendary grille forward by 7 degrees, all because Martin had brought an Italian design sensibility that the engineers at Crewe simply lacked. The result was highly controversial, loved by few, criticized by many. But essentially, it was a scaled-up 130 coupe dressed in British tailoring. Think about the sheer irony here. The very styling Fiat failed to sell ended up dressing the most exclusive automobile on Earth. As for Aurelio Lampredi, the engineer whose engine was held back, his immense talent sacrificed for corporate diplomacy with Maranello, his post-130 career became the sweetest vindication. In 1973, Lampredi took the technical helm at Abarth, the small, Turin-based racing specialist that Fiat had acquired back in 1971. Finally freed from the political red tape that choked his engine, in the 130, Lampredi unleashed his genius, designing the Fiat Abarth 131 rally power plant. This was a machine that captured 3 World Rally Constructors titles in 1977, 1978, and 1980. These victories were secured by the very man who had been blocked from letting his previous engine breathe. If the 130 was Lampredi's cage, then rallying was his redemption. Those 3 world titles offered definitive proof that the problem was never his talent, but with the poor decisions of his superiors. Today, the Fiat 130 Coupe remains a mysterious, captivating relic. For collectors, it remains surprisingly accessible, trading at prices far below a contemporary BMW E9 or Mercedes 350 SLC of the same era. Owners argue that the driving experience is unmatched by any contemporary Italian rival. That 6-cylinder feels remarkably silky, delivering power effortlessly, complemented by a cabin that mimics a first-class private jet enveloped in a deep quiet, serenity broken only by the soft hum of tires on asphalt. This is not a fast sports car, but a machine with an unmistakable, unrepeatable soul. Perhaps its true tragedy was being too far ahead of its time, far too sophisticated for the mass market badge it carried, and too ambitious for a market unprepared to receive it. Unquestionably an Italian masterpiece that the global market completely overlooked. Yet history is finally granting this vehicle the recognition it always deserved. As we look back at this forgotten chapter, and if it prompted you to evaluate this forgotten era of automotive design through a new lens, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so we can continue uncovering the forgotten histories that shaped our world. See you soon for our next investigation.